All right, welcome back. So this is going to be the last little bit of an intro on HTML and CSS, and we're just basically talking about CSS here. And it's going to be a little bit different in that I'm going to point you to a different set of slides from Dr. Engelsma because I didn't really feel comfortable just completely copying and pasting them without changing them. But they're a good overview and really nicely laid out and formatted, so definitely check those out. What I'm going to be doing in this video is walking you through a few demos and points about CSS. Now, as a caveat, what we're going to be doing eventually is pretty much using boilerplate CSS code. So we'll include things like Bootstrap to get nice responsive behaviors. Again, if you want a deep study on CSS, I'd highly recommend taking a web programming class of some sort, but our focus is mainly going to be on how do we use it for our own purposes rather than like a deep study of, you can go crazy with CSS basically, and highly recommend doing a quick Google search for different CSS templates or how to do X thing with CSS, like center or full screen image. Use a image as a centered background image, or create a Pinterest like layout, or lots of really cool things. Especially if you search for, say, CSS experiments, there's crazy things people are doing with it. But what we're going to be going over here is CSS. Now, what this does, just as a highlight, is that it makes our code pretty. So we're going to make our web pages look very, very nice. That's what CSS initially was for. It also now is pretty much responsible for responsiveness as well. And what that means is that my page is going to look identical. Well, it's going to look similar or at least usable in different browsers, different resolutions, different screen sizes, things like that. And if you've ever seen a website where it looks nice on your desktop and then you look at it on your phone and things look a little different, the menu is now vertical, the content's kind of stripped out, like the side things are stripped out or maybe moved around. We get that through CSS. Can you do it with JavaScript? Absolutely, but it's built in for CSS there as well. We'll get to that a little bit later with some of our libraries. Point is, we're going to position things and make them look nice. So there are really three different ways that you can apply CSS. Before we even get into talking about how it works, you can do it inline, which I'm going to tell you, just don't do. It's bad practice and it makes things messy. And what inline means, let me go over to I'm going to use CodePen today. So I'm going to have a paragraph tag. Hi, CIS658 students. Close my paragraph tag. Here is my rendered output. And let's do this a bit. An inline tag, I would say piece style equals color red, font size 3 EM. Okay, it's big. This is the worst thing that you can possibly do. And why is that? Well, did it work? Yes. Is it easy to read? Yeah. Is it extensible? And if I want to make a change later on, is it going to be hard to find? Absolutely. So if you start making web pages and you start making very complicated things, and you get into this habit of just inline quick and dirty styling, this area needs a little bit oomph of, a little bit of extra something. So let's add a quick tag. All right, looks fine. A couple weeks later, you're trying to hunt down this tag, and it's really a pain to figure out, oh, I did it inline. Okay, just don't do this. It's terrible practice. So I'm just going to say right now, don't do it. We can also do an internal style sheet to the page. So that is going to be our style block, which, if you recall, it was in the header. We had a style, and then we defined all of our tags in there. That's fine, okay? So the equivalent here is that I'm going to put my paragraph tag, color red, font size 15 EM, font weight. So here we have our tag, right? Now I've got a extra space in here. I'm not really sure why that's Let's make it just 5 EM. Maybe that was the issue. Okay. So this is the equivalent of a style block. And actually, let's be a little bit cleaner about this. So the idea is that me get rid of this form block here, put our tags back in. So this is from the last video where we were doing block versus inline. This is my inline style block here. Inline. This is my internal to the page style block. Inline would be if I added style for every single one of these, and hopefully you can see how that would bubble up and be a bad thing. All right, I can also include it separately. So this is going to be the cleanest. You're going to have a folder on your server and your website called styles, and then you'd have all your .css files. And then I would drop a, say, link, rel equals style sheet, type equals text CSS, again, not strictly required, href equals style / main. So the idea here would be that I would take this code out. I've got a Vim plugin, so it kind of overrides my copy paste functionality. And then I want to create a new file, and let's call this style.css. And in here, I'm just going to put my code. So same thing, nothing different here. And here, though, in my test.html file, I'm going to say link, and then rel equals style sheet, href equals, you call it main? No, style.css. Again, there's my holdover from my HTML4 days, putting this closing thing in here. Now if I refresh, or I open up my test.html page, hi there, there's my code. Did I not get rid of the JavaScript? I thought I did. Oh, wrong folder. It's what you get when you call everything test.html. Hey, look at that, text. And let's change. Did I forget something? I think rel equals style. Style sheets. I forget this. So I forgot that. Oh. Why isn't this working? Turn the border off. Okay. Yeah. The type equals text / CSS not strictly required. Oh, not enough coffee in the day. Hey, it still works. Incredible. Anyway, nice that you see my mistake there just to see what was wrong. But I turned my border off. Anyway, whole point was inline, don't do. Internal, that's fine. External, cleaner, and you can copy it from site to site. Okay, so this is where I'm going to point you towards Dr. Engels's slides. They're in the, in this same content area where you found this video. But what I would like to do now is go through a couple of different things that we can do. So, and these are the slides in question that I'm kind of talking about here, and I'm going to move it off screen so that I remember which demos I wanted to do. So, this is going to be really annoying to use CodePen trying to zoom in, so I'm just going to use this example here. So, div, paragraph. Now let's leave these tags here. All right, so things to consider. Here we have our selectors. Here we have our properties or attributes. Here I'm specifying the border. Here I'm specifying the margin. Now the margin is going to be the space on the outside of the element. Basically, how far away is it from other things? Padding would be how much space from basically from the walls of this element to the inside content. So just for example here, I could say P padding for 2px. I tend to use pixels. You can also use EMs or percentages as well. I'll let you get that from the slides, but basically just different units of measurement. All right, so again, this is my div up here. This is my paragraph. you kind of see the spacing. This is the margin that I've set. Now if I refresh, you see that the paragraph got slightly pushed in. All right, let me go even crazier. So let's make it 20 pixels. Now we see basically, again, this is padding, 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 padding. Margin would be from the inside or from the outside. So other thing with padding and margin and basically any positioning. If you just have one value, it's going to apply to the top, right, bottom, and left. Otherwise, you can specify them as a single value, as top, right, bottom, left. So if you give it 4 values, it's going to go kind of clockwise. Or if you give it just 2 values, it'll be top and bottom, left and right. So we're going to keep playing with this padding here. I could say 20 px and 5 px. So top and bottom, 20 pixels, left and right, 5 pixels. So you see this is kind of shifted left. That's because there's only a 5 pixel padding here. All right. And I could do this for top, right, bottom, and left. So top is 20, right is 5. For left aligned text, we're not really going to see this as an issue. Yeah, so let's do this with our span then, because that's going to fill. And hey, it even started weirdly placing things. All right, so top is 20, right is 5. Bottom, let's do 50, and left, let's do 15. And yeah, it's going to look weird. It's not going to look weird. What happened there? I forgot the PX. There we go. And you know what else? Let's get rid of some of these other things here too. Let's make our span its own thing. So I'm just going to do some quick commenting here. So the only thing that exists is my span element. So what we see here, top is, go back to my style, 20 pixels. Bottom is 50 pixels. Right is 5 pixels. Left is 15. So you can kind of see the difference here. Now, one thing which is going to be helpful for you, hopefully, is making use of your developer tools. So again, if we pop this well-known tab open and we go to elements, we actually can see our various tags. We see here, let me make this a touch bigger. Hey, here's the sizing of our various element. Here's the style sheet associated with it. If I click, so I'm picking this little arrow here, and I'm clicking this element, selects my span, hey, here's all of my style sheet tags. And I can play with it live in the browser. Let's make this padding 1000. That's going to not work, probably. 1000 is a little bit too big. Let's go 0. Hey, it went to the top. Let's make this 20. And it kind of shoved off there. Let's also add in a margin. Top, 5px. Probably because you're a span, that's not actually doing anything. It's margin, yeah. That's only going to, this gets into a weird thing with block elements versus inline elements. I should have foresaw that when I was doing this demo here. So let's put these guys back in. Have my div again, and let's select our first div. All right, so margin 4px. Let's say, make it bigger. So I'm just holding the up arrow on here. You can use it as kind of a slider. Every single one of these elements now has a massive margin. All right, so one thing I guess I'd kind of recommend is if you want to just play with these live, you can feel free to open up your tab or your developer tools, select an element, and just kind of play with it. You can add, you can delete, you can change, and then once you're happy with it, you just copy those changes over to your style sheet. This does not persist, so if I refresh the page, it goes back to normal. All right, so basic style stuff. Let's see, other things, we can also add identifiers in here as well. So I could say pound my span, and let's say this has a background of blue. And I can add a second span here, span ID equals my span. This is my span. So what I've done here is I've added an attribute, ID. This is going to be uniquely identifiable. One other thing with our tags, if you give it an ID, there should only be one of this thing. If you want multiple of this thing, it should be a class. So in that case, I would say class equals my span and copy this a whole bunch of times. ID, there should only be one. So refresh again. Here's my span. It's blue. The span up here, not blue. Again, it's uniquely identifiable. All right, other things. Let's round this off with a nice little demo for a menu and what we could do with that, since this video is now at 15 minutes. Again, getting a touch long. So I'm going to get rid of all of this junk here. Empty web page. There we go. Let's make this a little bit prettier. So I'm going to have a header. I'm going to have a nav area. And I'm going to have an article. This is my article. Okay. Refresh. Looks like that. Zoomed out. Okay. Again, this is just another type of block level element. What I'm going to do, though, is one kind of common way to have navigation elements is to just create a bullet list and transform it with CSS into a horizontal menu. So just to give you a view of what I'm doing here, I'm going to create a unordered list, so UL, that's our bullet point list. If I wanted numbered, I could do OL. Let's say link 1, and we need to make this a link, ahref equals pound. I'll explain this in a second here. All right, so what I've got going on is 3 list elements. Inside is a hyperlink tag, and it's going to nowhere, so pound just means go to some location on the page. And if I refresh, here are my links. I click them. You see the little tag pop up here. We're not going anywhere. Let's transform this into something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Now I'm going to get rid of all of this code as well from my style sheet. And I will link this in the description as well, but I'm just going to use this W3 Schools code for transforming it because this is pretty standard, honestly, code at this point. But we're going to end up with a bar that looks kind of like this. So I have my list element, right? So I've got my menu. This is what we're currently looking like here. Let's transform our list element to an inline element. Again, this is kind of where you have to get a feel for the different tags that are available, or at least know what to search for to help you along the way. So I've transformed it to inline, so every single list element will be inline. It is now an inline element. It is no longer a block level element. All right. So now what we want to do is let's transform our hyperlink tags, our A tags, into something with a color, with a padding, and into a block level element. So we go back to our code. Our LIs are doing this. Every single anchor tag or link tag is now going to be a block. It's going to have a padding. Again, that's internal to the element. And just follow the demo that I've got off screen here. 8 pixels and backgrounds. They use background color. I just use background as shorthand. And let's say I like 6Cs. So this is hex color, by the way. I don't think I talked to that earlier. Alrighty. And we need to also change our list element to be float. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to take our block element, which is this A tag, and allow it to be next to each other. Refresh. Yeah, it's a little uglier. We don't like that, right? So let's get the full example in here now. And I'm just going to copy and paste this because this is a lot of writing. I'm just kind of walking you through some of the ways we can transform these things. Alrighty. So UL, LI, LIA. This is part of the whole cascading part of the style sheets. So we're going to have rules for our unordered list style type none that gets rid of the bullets, margin and padding, changing how things are laid out, spacing wise, overflow hidden. If we have something that kind of goes beyond the block boundary, we're just going to hide it. And then the background color is going to be a dark gray, pound 333. Just for reference, if you're not aware, if you give 3 values for a color, it's just going to repeat to 6, since 6 are the full color for describing something. All right, so we have our encompassing UL block here. Our list elements are going to float, so that's kind of what we were getting towards in the last little bit. Put them next to each other. Our list elements that have an A tag, so that's all of these. We have a list element with an A tag. This would not apply to other A tags. So let me, just for funsies, href equals pound. So now we're going to get a link inside of our article here. These rules don't apply here because they're not inside of an li tag. So if you ever are kind of concerned about, all right, are my rules being followed or not, just try and manually parse this out in your head. Do I have an li tag followed by an a tag? I could do this div ul lia if I wanted to be even more verbose. But this is now a block element. It is white. It is center aligned. It has a particular padding to make it look nice for our current setup. And it has no text decoration. By default, links are going to have an underline when you hover over it. This will get rid of that to make it more menu-y. And we can also add additional properties for hovering. So instead of that underline, actually I should go back a tick here. We're not going to have the underline at all for the A tag, not just when we hover it. Here, though, we specify when we do hover, change the background color. And that honestly should be pretty much it here. So if I refresh my page, here's what I had before, and I refresh. Now I have this bar where, you know, let me change the color so it's a little more visible. Change to FFOOFF. Again, magic hot pink. Refresh, looks the same, but when I hover, background color changes. No JavaScript, all just pure CSS. And here, when I hover over this link, nothing changes. It looks like a normal, you know, URL. Background here is that dark color. These are floating. The A tags are transformed into block elements, and this is how we get a nice, you know, horizontal top menu. I added in the header and the nav tags for semantic purposes. They're not doing anything other than giving my page meaning and structure. Okay, I think that is enough for this video. So basically, I would highly recommend going through again those slides and checking them out. And as you get towards working on your term project, start thinking about how you want your pages to look. All right, what are you rendering to the user? What do you need to start thinking of for including, and how to actually search for that, right? Do you want a top nav bar? Do you want your nav bar to be on the right? Are you going to have a nice footer? Is there going to be a background image? Is there going to be some kind of a crazy animation happening in the background? Just to give you an example of that, CSS animation can do lots of crazy things with CSS. I didn't slide that all the way over. So here's something from Mozilla. Where is the demo? Hey, here is scrolling in text purely with CSS. And that's not what I thought it was going to be. CSS tricks, this is always a fun one. So here's a gradient background just kind of magically happening with CSS keyframe animation. There's lots of different really neat things that you can do with just pure CSS. If I look at something like this, I'd say, hey, that's probably JavaScript drawing to the screen, right? Nope, just CSS. So start thinking about what you want to include and go from there. Alrighty, video is super long now. Hope you have a good day. Bye, everybody.